Australia just announced the biggest shift in skilled migration policy in 15 years. Permanent residency pathways that were closed are now wide open. If you have been waiting, planning, or dreaming of Australian PR, the door just swung open, and it will not stay open forever. What I am about to tell you in the next few minutes could be the difference between watching from the sidelines and actually living your Australian dream. Welcome to Aussie Global Affairs, the channel that delivers crystal-clear immigration information without the legal mumbo-jumbo and without the false promises. I am here to give you the real story about what is happening with Australian immigration, what it means for you, and exactly what you need to do to take advantage of these changes. The update that dropped in the last 48 hours is absolutely massive. We are talking about new permanent residency pathways, expanded skilled occupation lists, revised points requirements, and opportunities for people who thought Australian PR was out of reach. Whether you are currently on a temporary visa in Australia, living overseas and planning your move, or you have been rejected in the past and thought your chance was gone, this update changes everything. Hit that subscribe button on Aussie Global Affairs right now and turn on all notifications, because immigration updates move at lightning speed and missing one could cost you your PR. Let's break down exactly what has been announced and how you can position yourself to succeed. The Australian government has released its migration program planning levels for 2025 to 2026, and the numbers are staggering. The total migration program has been set at 185,000 places, and the vast majority of these are allocated to skilled migration. This represents a significant commitment to bringing in talented workers to fill critical gaps in the Australian economy. Within this program, there are approximately 132,000 places reserved for skilled migrants, with the remainder allocated to family migration and special programs. But here is what makes this announcement truly groundbreaking. It is not just about the numbers. It is about the new pathways and the reduced barriers that make PR accessible to a much wider pool of applicants. The government has acknowledged that Australia is in a global competition for talent, and that the old system was too slow, too restrictive, and too complicated. These changes are designed to make Australia the destination of choice for skilled workers from around the world. We are seeing a fundamental shift from a system that said no by default to one that says yes to people with the skills Australia desperately needs. Let's talk about the new permanent residency pathways that have been revealed, because this is where the real opportunities lie. The first major pathway is the expanded skilled independent visa, subclass 189. This visa has always been highly competitive because it does not require employer sponsorship or state nomination. You apply based purely on your skills, qualifications, and points score. Under the new system, the points threshold for receiving an invitation has been adjusted downward for many occupations. Previously, you needed 65 to 70 points to have a realistic chance of receiving an invitation. The new system introduces a more dynamic approach where the points requirement varies based on occupation demand. For occupations on the high priority list, invitations are being issued to candidates with as few as 60 points. For other occupations, the threshold remains at 65 points, but the number of invitations being issued has increased dramatically. This means that if you have been sitting in the expression of interest pool waiting for an invitation, your chances just improved substantially. The government is committed to clearing the backlog and inviting more candidates across a broader range of occupations. The second major pathway getting a massive overhaul is the skilled nominated visa, subclass 190. This visa requires nomination from an Australian state or territory government, and each state has its own specific criteria and occupation lists based on their local needs. The 2025 to 2026 program has seen every state and territory receive increased nomination allocations, which means more opportunities across the board. But more importantly, the states are being given greater flexibility in who they can nominate. Previously, state nomination criteria were quite rigid, often requiring significant work experience in Australia or very high point scores. The new framework allows states to nominate candidates based on a broader range of factors, including potential contribution to the state economy, willingness to settle in regional areas within the state, and qualifications in emerging industries. Several states have already announced that they will be running targeted nomination rounds for specific occupations throughout the year. This means that even if your point score is modest, if you have skills in an occupation that a particular state desperately needs, you could receive a nomination invitation. The key is to research which states are prioritizing your occupation and tailor your expression of interest accordingly. The third pathway that has been significantly expanded is employer-sponsored permanent residency. The Employer Nomination Scheme, Subclass 186, allows Australian employers to sponsor skilled workers for permanent residency directly. Under the new rules, the list of eligible occupations for employer sponsorship has been massively expanded. Over 80 new occupations have been added, covering trades, healthcare, technology, hospitality, and professional services. The eligibility criteria have also been relaxed in several important ways. The age limit for some occupations has been increased from 45 to 50, recognizing that experienced workers in their late 40s still have a lot to contribute. The English language requirements for certain occupations have been reduced from proficient to competent level, making it easier for skilled tradespeople and technicians to qualify. Perhaps most significantly, the requirement for 2 years of work experience in your nominated occupation can now be met through a combination of overseas and Australian experience, whereas previously there was a strong preference for Australian experience. For people currently working in Australia on temporary work visas like the Subclass 482, this is your golden opportunity to transition to permanent residency. Regional permanent residency pathways have been given an absolutely enormous boost, and if you are willing to live and work outside the major capital cities, you now have some of the clearest and fastest routes to Australian PR available. The Skilled Work Regional Visa, Subclass 491, is a 5-year provisional visa that leads to permanent residency after 3 years of living and working in a regional area. The definition of regional areas has been expanded to include more locations, and the pathway to permanent residency has been made more straightforward. Under the new rules, after you have held the 491 visa for 3 years and can demonstrate that you have been living in a regional area and meeting minimum income requirements, you can apply for the Permanent Resident Subclass 191 visa. The income threshold has been set at a reasonable level that most full-time workers in skilled occupations will easily meet. The government has also introduced additional support for regional visa holders, including assistance with job placement, recognition of overseas qualifications, and settlement services. Regional Australia is booming with opportunities in healthcare, construction, agriculture, education, and tourism, and employers in these areas are desperate for workers. If you are prepared to spend 3 to 5 years in regional Australia, you can secure permanent residency much faster and with lower points requirements than through the metropolitan pathways. For international graduates of Australian universities, the new PR pathways are a game changer. One of the biggest frustrations for international students has been the uncertainty around pathways from study to permanent residency. You invest years of your life and tens of thousands of dollars in Australian education, only to find that getting PR afterward is difficult and unpredictable. The 2025 to 2026 program addresses this head-on. Graduates in priority fields including nursing, teaching, engineering, IT, and social work now have dedicated PR pathways that recognize their Australian qualifications and remove many of the barriers that previously existed. The new Graduate Skills Visa pathway allows recent graduates in these fields to apply for permanent residency after gaining just 1 year of skilled work experience in Australia, compared to the previous requirement of 3 years. The points requirements for graduate applicants have been reduced, and additional points are now awarded for Australian study in regional areas. There is also a new provisional graduate PR visa that allows you to work anywhere in Australia for up to 3 years while you complete the requirements for full permanent residency. This provisional status gives you certainty and stability while you build your Australian career. The points test itself has been reformed to better reflect the skills and attributes Australia needs. Points are still awarded for age, English language ability, skilled work experience, educational qualifications, and other factors. But the weighting has changed. Australian work experience now receives more points than it did previously, recognizing that people who have already proven themselves in the Australian workplace are valuable. Points for partner skills have been increased, acknowledging that migration decisions are made by families and that having two skilled adults in a household benefits Australia. Significantly, new points are now available for qualifications and work experience in STEM fields: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. If you have a degree or diploma in these areas, you can now claim an additional 5 points. There are also new points available for professional year programs completed in Australia and for holding state or territory nomination even for subclass 189 applications in certain circumstances. The overall effect of these changes is that more people will reach the points threshold, and those with Australian experience and qualifications will be better recognized. Let's address one of the biggest concerns people have about the skilled migration program, which is processing times. It does not matter how good the pathways are if applications take years to be decided. The government has made very specific commitments around processing times for the 2025 to 2026 program. For subclass 189 skilled independent visas, the target processing time is 6 to 8 months from invitation to decision. For subclass 190 state-nominated visas, the target is 4 to 6 months. For subclass 186 employer nomination scheme visas, the target is 3 to 4 months for the direct entry stream. These targets are backed up by significant investment in additional case officers, new digital processing systems, and streamlined health and character check procedures. The Department of Home Affairs has also committed to greater transparency, with applicants able to track their application status in real time through an improved online portal. Of course, these are targets, and complex cases may take longer, but the direction is clear. Australia is committed to making decisions faster so that skilled migrants can get on with building their lives rather than being stuck in limbo for years. One aspect of the new PR pathways that is not getting enough attention is the reformed approach to occupation lists. Australia uses several occupation lists to determine eligibility for skilled migration. The medium and long-term strategic skills list and the short-term skilled occupation list have been the main lists for years, but they were often slow to update and did not reflect real-time labor market needs. Under the new system, occupation lists will be reviewed and updated every 6 months rather than annually, making them far more responsive to changing economic conditions. More importantly, a new category called critical skills occupations has been created. This list identifies occupations where Australia has acute and immediate shortages, and applicants in these occupations receive priority processing, lower points thresholds, and access to additional visa pathways. Current occupations on the critical skills list include registered nurses, software engineers, electricians, plumbers, early childhood teachers, aged care workers, and civil engineers. If your occupation is on the critical skills list, your path to PR just became dramatically easier and faster. The government has made it clear that these are the workers Australia needs most urgently, and the system will move mountains to get them here. English language requirements have been a major barrier for many skilled migrants, particularly those from non-English speaking countries. While Australia understandably wants migrants who can communicate effectively, the previous system was often inflexible and did not account for the reality that many highly skilled workers struggle with standardized English tests, even though they can function perfectly well in English-speaking workplaces. The new framework takes a more nuanced approach. For occupations where high-level English is absolutely essential, such as teaching, nursing, and legal professions, the requirements remain at proficient level, which is typically IELTS 7 or equivalent. However, for trades, technical occupations, and many professional roles where English is important but not the primary skill, competent English is now sufficient, which is typically IELTS 6. Even more significantly, there are now alternative ways to demonstrate English proficiency beyond standardized tests. If you have worked for at least 3 years in an English-speaking country, you can use that work experience as evidence of your English ability. If you have completed post-secondary education taught in English, that can also count. These changes recognize that there are many ways to acquire English language skills, and that a single test score is not always the best measure of someone's ability to communicate and contribute in Australia. For people who have previously applied for Australian PR and been refused, the new pathways offer fresh hope. One of the most frustrating aspects of the old system was that a refusal could effectively bar you from reapplying for several years, even if your circumstances changed or the rules were updated in your favor. The 2025 to 2026 program includes provisions that allow previously refused applicants to lodge new applications under the updated criteria without the previous refusal being held against them. There are some exceptions, particularly for cases where fraud or character issues were involved, but for straightforward refusals based on not meeting points requirements or occupation list criteria, you can try again with a clean slate. This is particularly important given how much the rules have changed. If you were refused 2 years ago because your occupation was not on the skilled occupation list, but it has now been added, you absolutely should reapply. If you were refused because you were 5 points short, but the threshold has now been lowered or new points categories have been introduced, you should reapply. The government is essentially acknowledging that the old system locked out many people who have the skills Australia needs, and they are opening the door again. The compliance and integrity measures in the new program are also worth understanding because they affect how you should approach your application. The Australian government is investing heavily in systems to detect fraud, false claims, and the use of unregistered migration agents who make false promises and take people's money. For genuine applicants, this is actually positive news because it maintains the integrity of the system and ensures that places go to people who genuinely qualify rather than those who try to cheat. However, it also means you need to be meticulous with your application. Every claim you make must be supported by genuine documentation. Your work experience must be verifiable through reference letters, employment contracts, and payslips. Your qualifications must be assessed and recognized by the relevant Australian authorities. Your English test results must be from approved test centers. Cutting corners or making exaggerated claims will not only result in refusal, but could result in a ban from applying again for several years. The message is simple. Be honest, be thorough, and if your case is complex, use a registered migration agent who is bound by professional standards and accountability. The Department of Home Affairs has made it very clear that they will show no mercy to fraudulent applications, but they will process genuine applications fairly and efficiently. Ladies and gentlemen, Australia has just opened its doors wider than they have been in over a decade. The permanent residency pathways revealed for 2025 to 2026 represent a genuine opportunity for skilled workers from around the world to make Australia their home. This is not hype. This is not speculation. This is official government policy backed by substantial resources and a clear commitment to bringing in the skills Australia needs to grow and prosper. Whether you are a healthcare professional, a tradesperson, an IT specialist, an engineer, a teacher, or any one of hundreds of skilled occupations, there is likely a pathway that fits your situation. The barriers have been lowered, the processing times are faster, and the criteria are clearer. But, and this is critical, opportunities like this do not last forever. Migration programs have quotas, and once those places are filled, the door closes until the next program year. If you are serious about Australian permanent residency, now is the time to act. Get your skills assessed, take your English test if you have not already, lodge your expression of interest, research which states are nominating your occupation, and if you are already in Australia on a temporary visa, talk to your employer about sponsorship. Here at Aussie Global Affairs, we will be releasing detailed videos on each of these pathways, breaking down specific occupation lists, explaining the points test in detail, and providing step-by-step guides for applications. If this video has given you hope or clarity about your Australian PR prospects, smash that like button. Subscribe to Aussie Global Affairs and hit the notification bell so you catch every update, because in the world of immigration, information is power. Share this video with friends, colleagues, and family members who are considering Australian PR because they need to know about these changes. Drop a comment below telling me which pathway you are most interested in or what questions you still have, and I will make sure to address them in upcoming content. Australia is calling for skilled workers, and the pathway is clearer now than it has been in years. Stay informed, stay prepared, and take action. This is Aussie Global Affairs, your trusted guide to Australian immigration. See you in the next video, and best of luck on your journey to Australian Permanent Residency.